I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring Gang or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, bloody Angola. Oh, bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman. Woody is at polygraph school, some sort of conference or something out of state. So it's me today, and I'm going to bring you some more writings of Wilbert Rideau. I have had at least 20 people email or message me on the Facebook page, and they are loving these little short stories by Wilbert Rideau that I found in the Angolite and some other publications. And they're saying any that I come across that I could share, they'd love it. And so hopefully y'all are loving the content there. And I've got a couple more that I was able to dig up. And the first one I'm going to reference is called Butler's Park by Wilbert Rideau. And it says, this looks like it's going to be the best thing to happen here since they put inmates in blue jeans, Ernest Warren said of his new duties. An Angola security officer, Warren assists on varying duties with a new and innovative feature of the prison's inmate visiting system called outdoor visiting, announced earlier this year by Corrections Secretary C. Paul Phelps, who described it as the first step in the administration's long-term plan to institute incentives to induce and reward good behavior among the prisoner population. The program furthers to improve the conditions of inmate visiting at Angola. Traditionally, inmates at Louisiana State Penitentiary have been permitted only two methods of visiting, the manner being determined by custody status. Maximum security inmates must visit with a screen or glass partition separating them from visitors. Medium and minimum security inmates are permitted contact visits. The inmate and his visitor simply walk into a visiting room, select whatever table they desire, and are free to touch or embrace. The new program adds another dimension to visiting, and the first stage of it is already a reality. A spacious, tree-shaded park nestled against sloping hills on the outskirts of an employee residential area has been created at the prison for eligible trustee inmates to have picnics with their approved visitors. Barbecue grills have been installed to allow inmates and visitors to cook their own meals. Administrative emphasis is upon the relaxed atmosphere and allowing inmates and visitors the freedom to do things together as a family. People tend to forget that, regardless of the reason the inmate is in prison. He's somebody's father, son, husband, or brother. That pointed out by Buddy Dale Weber. Weber, a security officer, is on-site coordinator of the program at the park. If the inmate is to eventually leave here and be reintegrated into free society, we have to prepare him for it by helping him maintain and preserve his family ties. Having an inmate visit his family across the table in a crowded and noisy visiting room leaves a lot to be desired. Out here in the park, a father can play tag with his kids, they can move around, the family can cook and do something together as a family. This type of visiting is a much more meaningful way to let the inmate remain a husband to his wife, a son to his parents, a father to his children. In addition, this kind of visiting is less stressful for the visitors, who, we must remember, are tax-paying citizens who haven't committed crimes. I think this is definitely a step in the right direction for Louisiana State Penitentiary. The visitors are grateful. This is the first time in 7 years that we've been able to all be together as a family with Layton, Merle Creel states, watching her son and his child chase a butterfly. It's such a great change from sitting in a visiting room. It feels good to be able to get out like this, and we're really enjoying it. Danny Welch had told his mother Mary about the new visiting program, but she admits, I still didn't know what to expect. You can't really picture it into your mind until you come here and actually see it. And having seen it, it's still hard to believe. It's so much more than I anticipated. The visitors love it, Weber states. Once they come out here, they'll go to any length to be able to come back and visit like this again. In fact, the inmates are now getting pressure from their wives and families as a result. They know they can only come out here and visit like this as long as the inmate is behaving himself while he's in prison. And I hear the visitors talking to the inmate as they're leaving, telling him under no uncertain terms that he better stay out of trouble so that they can continue to visit like this. It's true, Louis Daybon, a trustee, acknowledges. Right after the first visit in the park, my wife served notice on me that if I caused her to lose this privilege, I'm in trouble. Eligibility for a picnic visit in the park is more or less in the hands of the inmate. His custody status and prison conduct record determine whether or not he and his visitors are eligible for the new program. Currently, the inmate is required to be a Class A trustee. It must not have had a write-up within the past year. I don't know if anything is better than this to give an inmate a reason to keep his business straight, Warren said. It works out good for the system, the inmates, and all us employees who will benefit from the inmates behaving themselves. That's the purpose of the program, Deputy Warden Hilton Butler admits. He created the outdoor visiting program. It's to give the inmates and visitors something good to look forward to for a while, at the same time making the prison more trouble-free. The park was Hilton's idea, Warden Frank Blackburn states. He felt that the trustees of Angola deserve something for their efforts and good behavior, and as you know, there's not very much we've been able to do for them. Ever since Hilton told me about it, I've liked the idea, and I encouraged him to do it. And I'm proud to say that it's turning out very well. I think it'll do a man a lot of good to be able to visit and picnic with his family out there rather than being jammed up in the visiting room, Butler explains. Some of the inmates going out there haven't cooked or eaten with their family in 10, 15 years. Now they can have a picnic, run around and play with their kids. I think it'll contribute to keeping the families closer together. It'll also help the inmate by giving him a better attitude while encouraging other inmates who don't qualify to straighten up their act, make better men of themselves, and work toward trying to get the same privilege. It's also a good disciplinary tool because once they've had a visit in the park, they're not going to want that privilege canceled by getting a write-up. The program has had its impact. While Danny Welch pointed out the new privilege won't cause any dramatic changes in his behavior since he makes it his business to stay out of trouble anyway, he admits that the knowledge that the write-up will cancel the privilege does make you a little bit more careful to make sure you don't get a write-up. He believes the program will prove a definite incentive to other inmates. Once they see the park and visit like this, they'll realize it's definitely worth working and looking forward to. Outdoor visiting in the park begins with the onset of warm weather and runs until the weather gets too cold for people to be out there comfortably, Butler explains, pointing out that Louisiana's winters rarely last more than 3 months. Unlike regular visiting programs, which restrict visits to 2 hours or less, the new program allows inmates to be with their visitors in the park for 6.5 hours, from 8 in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon. Visitors eligible for picnic visits are required to arrive at the prison gate between 8 and 9:30. Those arriving late must take their visit in the visiting room under normal procedures. Given that time factor, visitors have to put forth a little extra effort to get to the prison within the appointed time, but many are willing to make it. A Texas couple drove 12 straight hours from Brownsville to get here in time to have a picnic visit with their son. A New Orleans woman whose car broke down in Baton Rouge hired a taxi to get her to the prison on time. While the early hour might be somewhat inconvenient, the visitors have no complaints. As Mary Welch, also from New Orleans, states, "It was worth having to get up at 4 a.m. to get here on time. The surroundings, the atmosphere, it's all so different and nice. That is the most wonderful thing that could have happened to us. Visiting like this lets us really feel like a family." To be scheduled for a picnic visit in the park, all eligible inmates must submit a written request to Butler, proposing a specific date on which his visitors can come. Since a year without a disciplinary infraction is in the criteria, Administrative Assistant Nettie Voorhees pulls the inmate's file for Butler's review. "I do make exceptions," Butler admits. "If the inmate had a minor disciplinary infraction, something like dropping a cigarette butt on the floor or not cleaning up his bed or something, I don't hold that against him." For example, one inmate requesting a park visit had 2 write-ups for gambling, but hadn't had a write-up for several years before then. I went on and I approved him for the program. I'm flexible. I'm willing to consider the nature of the infraction, but disciplinary infractions involving refusal to work or insubordination with my officers are the kind I'm not going to give any consideration to. While the regular visiting program operates 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, the outdoor visiting program in its infancy and restricted to Class A trustees operates only a small number of days per month, those days being determined primarily by the number of requests for each visit. Eligible inmates are allowed only 1 picnic visit per month. A plan to extend the allowance to twice per month is currently being considered. The park contains 12 tables, and visits that are not scheduled until there are enough approved requests to justify opening the park to accommodate them. The problem is that the Class A trustees constitute only a small segment of the prison's inmate population, and a substantial percentage of them are men who have been confined here for years, men who experience the natural corresponding decrease in the number and frequency of visitors that goes along with the passage of time. And with disciplinary reports barring some from eligibility, the number of inmates currently participating in the program is small. Eligible inmates requesting an outdoor visit are encouraged to give an alternate date. If he asks for a particular day, he might be the only person requesting that day, Butler points out. The stricter regulations governing behavior in the prison's visiting rooms do not apply to the outdoor visiting program, where the emphasis is on a relaxed atmosphere and freedom. Aside from requiring that everyone stay within the perimeter of the park, we only ask that each set of visitors respect the others, Voorhees explains. Each inmate is responsible for his visitors and children. We rely upon those who have the privilege to want to keep it and not mess it up for themselves or others. A disciplinary infraction incurred at any time, anywhere in the prison can result in removal of the inmate from the program. Given the importance of visiting, the loss of outdoor visiting privileges, in addition to the normal punishment meted out by the prison disciplinary court, makes a disciplinary infraction particularly costly. That's why I'll consider the nature of the write-ups and make exceptions, says Butler. You have to understand that I'm giving the inmate something special, and all I'm asking for in return is that he stays out of trouble, something he should do anyway. I don't think that's asking for much, so I want him to understand that he's automatically losing all of this if he messes up. The only consideration he's going to get, and the only exception I'll make, is if the infraction is something minor. Something I can understand and maybe ignore. Other than that, he's getting taken off the program. If he's not, I'll be defeating the whole purpose of the program. Butler's enthusiasm for the new program is common knowledge. He paid for the first round of charcoal for the barbecues out of his own pocket, asking that visitors donate whatever they wish to a fund so that the steady supply could be available for everyone utilizing the park. He often visits the park, going from table to table, greeting the visitors and asking for their input on ways to improve the park. He wanted to install swings and provide playthings for the children, something many of the visitors also suggested. But he's having to reconsider. I'd love to do that, he said, but I'm having to give it a lot of thought because I've got to consider the possible civil liability involved if one of the kids gets hurt. That's something I'm going to have to discuss with Mr. Phelps and our lawyers before I install anything. Recently, he permitted one visitor to donate a small plastic plaything in the park for smaller kids. The new program has been greeted with enthusiastic support from Phelps and Blackburn, visiting personnel, and a lot of prison personnel who you wouldn't think would normally like the idea, Butler said. Even staunch, hardline security people tell me they think it's one of the best things that ever happened to the inmates here, and they've offered to do whatever they can do to help make it a success. Everyone wants to see it work. For instance, when we had to come up with a way of letting visitors cook without allowing them to bring groceries into the prison, Randy Wistine, who works in the commissary, agreed to leave his home on his days off to go open the store and fill orders for the visitors. There have been times when I told him that he didn't have to do that. I would personally go get groceries, but he wanted to do it. And that's the kind of support we've been getting from a lot of people. The maintenance department and the inmate workers, my staff, officials, personnel, and even inmate organizations who's offered to buy things that might be needed in the park. Everybody seems supportive. If there's somebody who's not, or if they have a problem with the program, they're not letting me know about it. The program began with trustee prisoners, but it will not end with them. Picnic rights for Class A trustees represent only the first stage of a much larger program. I definitely intend to extend it to a Class B trustee and medium security inmates, Butler states. They'll both be integrated into the program at the same time and place, and it'll operate more or less like it does for the Class A trustees in the park. The only difference will be the location. He's considering creating a park-like area adjacent to the main prison visiting room. He had initially planned to start the program for medium security inmates next spring, but the program for the trustees is working so well that I'm actually trying to get something started for medium security inmates this fall, he said. But if I can't pull it off, I'll definitely have it ready by the spring. Those who are interested in participating in the program can get ready for it. All they've got to do is give me a year without a serious write-up. Butler anticipates no problems in extending picnic visits to medium security inmates. We're still going to have inmates strip search following their visits, just as we do now on regular visits in the visiting room, he points out. We don't want any contraband flowing through there. Of course, there's always the possibility after a while someone might toy around with the idea of trying something. After all, there are some people who go through a lot of hassle to get some dope. But that's no real problem because that kind of prisoner is not likely to be eligible for the program to start with. He's not the kind who can stay clean of the disciplinary report for an entire year. After considering all angles and based on my 33 years of experience with prisoners, I don't expect any increase in the flow of contraband or any other type of problems. Butler feels the full potential of the program won't be realized until medium security inmates are incorporated into it. That's when it is expected to become a full-fledged affair, operating on a daily basis. Medium security inmates constitute the majority of the prison population and the largest percentage of inmates receiving regular visits from friends and relatives. I think we're going to have a lot of people in the program, Butler speculates, and the more, the better. I hope we have so many people in the program that it gets so big we have to keep expanding the picnic area. Because if there are 1,000 inmates participating in the program, that's 1,000 prisoners who are staying out of trouble and not causing problems for anyone. That's good news. I think this program has the potential of being one of the best incentives for good behavior that you can come up with, given the circumstances and what we've had to work with, Butler says. It's something to help the inmates, something that once they get it, I don't think they're going to want to lose it. And that will reduce disciplinary problems, make the prison more trouble-free, and in the long run, be good for the security of the institution. The outdoor visiting program might be an idea whose time has arrived, Jack Donnelly, the warden of the troubled Washington Correctional Facility at Bogalusa, the state's newest prison, recently visited the park site and has requested all available information about the program. He's considering creating a similar one at his prison, which has been plagued by a lack of adequate incentive mechanisms. Butler and his idea were paid the ultimate compliment at a dinner in his honor attended by officials and numerous inmate leaders. Warden Blackburn, at the request of the inmates, officially proclaimed the park site's new name to be Butler Park. And in the postscript, it says Leighton Creel, Louis Dabon, and Danny Welch served their sentences and were released. Sergeant Ernest Warren retired. Buddy Dell Weber no longer works at the park, and Nettie Voorhees transferred to a prison closer to her home. Frank Blackburn retired in 1987, and Hilton Butler was named warden that same year. In 1987, picnic visits were extended to medium security inmates. The now expanded picnic visiting program is administered by the Prison Classification Department. Similar programs now exist at most Louisiana prisons, and that's a pretty good one. And we talk about it a lot on Bloody Angola, and that is hope, right? You can't just lock prisoners up, give them no privileges whatsoever, and expect everything to be copacetic. And I'll continue on to the next one I chose, and that's called the Pelican Protector. Year's End in 1986 saw official dedication of the John B. Rabalais Waterfowl Refuge in Louisiana State Penitentiary. The refuge is believed to be the first wildlife sanctuary within the perimeters of a prison anywhere in the nation. The story of the refuge began some 4 years ago when Lieutenant Bobby Olivo discovered a pelican trapped in a trout line on Lake Killarney. He freed the unfortunate bird, but the pelican had suffered serious injuries to his wing. Olivo saw to it that the bird was treated and nursed back to health. Once healthy, the bird was still unable to fly because he had a damaged wing. So Captain John B. Rabelais took him to Camp F, where he was adopted and cared for by the prisoners. And guess what they named him, y'all? They named him Pierre. Rabelais and Ron Wickberg, a lifer, decided that Pierre should have a mate or be relocated to an area where a mate was available. With the blessing of Warden Frank Blackburn, Wickberg spearheaded the project, contacting the media and people throughout the region. Pierre, one of the most unusual of jailbirds, quickly became a focal point of the media. He was featured in Louisiana Conservationist magazine and was the subject of television reports. As a result of the media attention, a mate was found for Pierre. Dr. W.S. Bivens of the Louisiana State University Vet School and 2 students had treated a gunshot wound pelican they named Samantha, and she needed a place to rest and heal. Through the combined efforts of Bivens and Fur and Refuge Division Chief Johnny Tarver, Samantha was brought to Angola. She immediately hit it off with Pierre. A variety of other feathered creatures gradually joined the 2 pelicans at the pond, including 2 more injured pelicans. Compliments of the Audubon Park Zoological Gardens. To ensure the peace of the Camp F pond for its increasing waterfowl population, Rabelais persuaded Warden Blackburn to prohibit all hunting and fishing there. On December 2, 1986, on a sunny but chilly afternoon, a host of prison personnel, prisoners, local and state officials, and friends and relatives of Rabelais gathered in front of Camp F to dedicate the John B. Rabelais Waterfowl Refuge as a testimonial to the man and his 30 years of service at Angola. Warden Blackburn served as MC for the event. Prior to acknowledging the dignitaries present, Deputy Warden Hilton Butler recounted his long-standing friendship with Rabelais. "John and I go back a long ways," he told the audience. "It was kind of like it is now. We were real short-handed. I was the captain then, and John had just started working for me. He wanted to get married, and I told him to go ahead. I'd work in his place. So I pulled a shift for him, and he got married. To this day, I don't know whether I did Miss Dora a great favor or not," referring to that guy's wife. Wickberg, who had worked for Rabelais to create the sanctuary, told the group, "Today, mankind is solemnizing 2 important events. It's reaffirming concern for our wildlife and environment, and it's paying tribute to a special human being and friend. In my opinion, there's no man more deserving." The high point of the event was provided by attorney Jack Grimion, who, as an attorney general, first met and became associated with Rabelais long ago, and when Rabelais worked in the prison's record office. I've always cherished his friendship, and I will value it as long as I live, he declared. Calling his old friend up to stand beside the podium, Gremillon presented him with an official certificate on behalf of J. Burton Angell, Secretary of the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries, and of the Jeffersonians, which was a civic organization. A simple man of simple taste, Rabelais accepted the honor with both pride and humility. He was never a soft man, but his face bore the lines of age and wisdom and mere a hint of compassion that lay beneath the gruff exterior. He was a man for his times and a man of few words. I've always said, and still do, that anything can be accomplished by anybody willing to work together. This refuge is the perfect example of that belief. Visibly moved by the honor, he thanked everyone for participating. Bishop Stanley Ott of the Baton Rouge Catholic Diocese blessed the refuge, pointing out that the pelican is a symbol or a sign of the Eucharist. A pelican's mother will give her own blood to her young in order to feed it, and the pelican is a beautiful symbol of love and unselfishness, and of total giving. Assistant Warden Roger Thomas closed the ceremonies, observing, "We had quite a few of these grand openings in recent months, and I'm happy to see that this has been one of the nicer ones. It demonstrates that there is much more to Angola beyond the bars and guns. We are not only in the business of rehabilitating inmates, we are now going to be rehabilitating birds." Tarver, representing the Wildlife and Fisheries Department, told the Angolite, "I've been looking forward to coming here to see for myself the results of everyone's efforts, and I'm pleased with what I see. It is most likely that this is the first such sanctuary ever created inside a prison setting, an event for which Louisiana is proud." Sheriff Bill Daniels of West Feliciana Parish, on hand to extend his congratulations, said, "John has been a big asset to the correction system and is deserving of this honor." Rabelais told the Angolite, "The dedication of the refuge in my name is an honor I will never forget. This event is very touching, emotional, and a proud time for me and my family. Although the honor was bestowed on me personally, it's an honor which is shared by many people who participated in this venture. The refuge signifies much more than a place for different birds and animals to live together in peaceful existence. It confirms that all employees and inmates of a maximum security institution, as well as all people, can work together under unusual circumstances to develop positive programs in any environment. I personally dedicate the refuge to all employees and inmates in Angola as a symbol of cooperation, dedication, honor, respect, and accomplishment. Words cannot express the gratitude I feel for the efforts of all inmates and staff who were responsible for developing the refuge and for dedicating it in my name." Rabelais' family was touched by the event. His wife, Dora, who heads the prison's legal programs department, stated, "It is of great significance to all of us at this particular time in our lives. The dedication ceremony was very moving and memorable for all of us. While John portrays a gruff, tough, professional exterior, those of us who know him know that he's a kind, dedicated man of courage, honesty, and integrity, who has a special place in his heart for anyone or anything suffering a disadvantage. I cannot think of a more fitting tribute for John's 30 years of dedicated professional service to Louisiana State Penitentiary. I hope that the honor bestowed on John will serve as a reminder to all employees that corrections is not a thankless profession, and that the refuge will serve as a symbol to both staff and inmates that they can work together to accomplish positive goals." And in the postscript, sadly, it says Captain John B. Rabelais died in 1987. The wildlife refuge is still maintained, and the pelican still lives in a nearby waterway. And I got one more for you that you're going to find really interesting. And look, if you are from Louisiana, you've heard of the Neville Brothers. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite Christmas albums of all time is Aaron Neville's Christmas. If you ain't heard it, go listen to it. Love Aaron Neville's voice. And a lot of people don't know he used to perform in Angola a lot, and they would actually set up concerts with Aaron Neville volunteering his time. And I'm going to tell you a story of one of those that was written by Tommy Mason, who was an editor on the Angolite. And it says, "Prison is hard, a smothering place where men become stagnant. Prisoners are bombarded with public's notion that they are animals who are not to be trusted, who will prey on law-abiding citizens, and who are incapable of rising above their mistakes. In spite of these stereotypes, many people are willing to extend a hand to men behind bars and help them rise above their worst failings. At Louisiana State Prison in April 1987, a group of musicians did just that by staging a concert for them. The entertainers were the Neville Brothers, Charmaine Neville, and Real Feelings, and the Feister Sisters. 7 years earlier, Chuck Colson of Watergate fame brought Johnny Cash to perform in Angola through the organization Prison Fellowship. That was the first concert since 1974. Ironically, following the show in 1974, spirits were high and there was much expectation for future concerts. However, state politics were gradually moving right. The result was no concerts, and on the occasion when interested entertainers tried to come, key administrators were not willing to allow them to put on shows. The seed for the 1987 concert began, coincidentally, when Angolite editor Wilbert Rideau spoke to a civics group from the New Orleans area. It happened that Lynn Batson and Aaron Neville of the Neville Brothers were in the audience. Neville is the head of the Uptown Youth Cultural and Developmental Center, a nonprofit volunteer organization he founded in 1980, whose mission is to help young people become self-reliant, contributing members of society rather than wasting their lives on crimes, drugs, and alcohol. His brother, Charles, served time in Angola during the 1960s, the bloody years, y'all. Lynn Batson has her own legal practice and has worked with the Nevilles for about 9 years as their unofficial spokeswoman. When she discovered how long it had been since a concert had been organized for Angola prisoners, she decided to take action. The Nevilles were 100% in favor of doing the concert, Batten said. The Feister Sisters, a local harmony group, were interested in coming, and so was Charmaine Neville and her group Real Feelings. At Angola, Hilton Butler, the newly appointed warden of the prison, liked the idea and designated Assistant Warden Roger Thomas to oversee the projects. There were problems. I guess I did foresee some of them, Batson told the Angolite. It was hard to make people see the amount of expenses that were incurred in doing something like this. The musicians, of course, were donating their time, but we still had equipment to move and arrange. Roger Thomas admitted, "I knew it was going to be a tremendous amount of work, but concerts provide an outlet to the inmates. It's done all over the country. I never heard of anyone who had a strong objection to someone coming in and performing for inmates. I've always been for things that benefit inmates as long as it doesn't interfere with the security operations of the penitentiary." Wilbert Rideau sought out the leaders of the inmate clubs to come up with donations to cover the expenses of trucking, paying roadies, and other fees. The Angola Amateur Boxing Club, the Pardon Finance Board, and the Angola JCs, the Lifers Association, the Drama Club, and the Social, Educational, and Athletic Club donated money to the event. Prisoners were involved in almost every aspect of the production. Terry Decal, Jerry Bell, and a crew of prisoners worked to design a stage that would accommodate the equipment and entertainers. Thomas was also appreciative of the cooperation he got from security. You couldn't ask for a smoother operation. It was done through the coordination of security, administration, and the inmates. This thing went off without a hitch. Charles Neville, an inmate at Angola some 20 years after being convicted for possession of marijuana, flew in from Oregon to make the concert. Charles is quick to chide those people whose attitude is, if you're going to wind up in the penitentiary, that's going to be the end of your life. He admits that for some people, coming to prison is the end. However, the fact that you have served time doesn't end your life. Now, a talented saxophonist, he acknowledges that his time behind bars provided him with both the opportunity and the motivation to refine his musical technique. The one thing that happened to me is it got my technical skill together on the horn, he told the Angolite. When I came, I could play, but I hadn't ever sat down and spent hours and hours every day practicing scales. While at Angola, Charles had time to do that, and he had the determination to do it. When I left here, I could go anywhere and play with anybody. Really, that was the beginning of a big change in my life. The effort Charles Neville put into getting the most out of serving time and his desire to overcome mistakes of the past opened up a vast new world to him upon his release from prison. When he was paroled, he went to New York, where his brother Aaron was enjoying success with his big hit, Tell It Like It Is. Charles had traveled the world, established himself as an outstanding musician, and now lecturer at Oregon State University. 20 years had passed since Charles Neville was an inmate at Louisiana State Prison, but he hasn't forgotten neither the experience nor the people who are behind bars. 80% of Angola's population is black, and Charles says, I would like to talk to people and hear about stories and toasts and things like that to which used to be passed down from generation to generation in black families. Charles had hoped obtaining a grant would allow him to preserve those stories that have enriched the black culture. An accomplished musician, father, and grandfather, Charles Neville has an identity, a sense of direction. I think of myself as a person now, a useful, functional part of any community. What you do determines what you are, not what you have done. I know that there are some people here who are really a number one type person. They are real people. They just had bad breaks in life. I just like to say for everyone, you are going to get out of here. This is not the end of the line, but when you get out, that's the beginning. While Charles Neville's experience may be unique, he was not the only prison story. Holly Benson of the Feister Sisters was also at Angola 20 years ago. Her dad was a basketball coach in California, and during the summer of 1968, he was the recreation director at Angola. The real funny thing was the day my dad walked into the Angolite office, the guy working there was his old college roommate, and now he was an inmate. Benson said that her mom and dad and sisters lived outside of Angola's gates that summer. That's the first place I ever saw James Booker play, she recalled. Booker was leading a band at the time, and Charles Neville had been in that band the year before. In the late 60s, prison was a very hard place, and women were not a part of the overall prisoner routine. We didn't have that much of contact with prisoners, Holly said. We had people that would work with you at your house or with my dad, and then we had a fellow that used to help my mom around the house. Benson remembers one inmate in particular. His name was AC. He used to be a gardener. He had been here forever. After his release, Benson said he just came back. There was nobody in his family left alive, and there was no place for him to go. Benson learned of the concert from the Nevilles, and Charles was here before, and I'm kind of another kind of alumni, she said. Charmaine Neville is Charles' daughter and a talented entertainer in her own right. As a young child, she never visited her father in prison. Matter of fact, she commented, I didn't even know he was in there until he was already out. They kept that kind of secret from me. Once out of prison, Charles told his daughter about his experience. He told me stories about Angola. First, they were kind of scary, but then as I got older, I understood. Performing at the prison was a first-time experience for Charmaine. At first, I was kind of nervous about it, she told the Angolite before the show. I'm not nervous now that I'm here. I think the guys are really going to enjoy the show. I know I'm going to give them a really good one because I've never been here before, and I know that they haven't heard any kind of entertainment for a long time. We're going to make it good as long as we can. Cyril Neville, at 38, is the youngest of the Neville brothers. He played music professionally starting at the age of 16. But he says, music has always been a part of my life. My older brothers rehearsed in my front room, so I have always been exposed to it. Cyril has very strong feelings about having the opportunity to perform for the men at Angola. I feel like the same way I would feel if I got invited to South Africa to play for the brothers and sisters over there. He said of the prisoners of Angola, they've got a lot of people that I went to school with and grew up with and everything. It's an honor to be able to come here and lighten the load some. The groups did not receive any payment for performing at Angola, and they didn't expect any, but Cyril said, well, it's not really for nothing. You could say this is a labor of love. We might not personally get a chance to meet any of these people, but I will always feel good in my heart that we were able to do something to show that I care. By far, the most well-known of the Nevilles is Aaron. He has been in the music business since the early 50s. His grandmother comes from the Caribbean islands, and his uncle founded a New Orleans-based dance group, the famous Wild T. Chapatulas. We are a musical family. That's the only way I can put it, Aaron told the Angolite. Even as kids, I got a grandson. He's just 2 years old. He just hears music and he's got to move. What the Nevilles play isn't message music. It's just music. We just do what comes from the heart, Aaron explained. We got a unique style which comes from Mardi Gras, Fats Domino, and 4 individual brothers, plus our rhythm section. Then we pull everything. For all the Nevilles, the trip to Angola was a special occasion. We are getting ready to go back overseas, and I figure this is about giving a blessing, Art Neville said. Put it like this, if it wasn't for the grace of God, this could be me. It was really important, Aaron said, because we're playing for some people that aren't going to get a chance to see no live entertainment. Then it got into the concert, and it said the Feister sisters, Holly, Yvette, and Susie opened the show. The arena was filled with over 1,000 prisoners. The prisoners were excited, and the entertainers were warming up to their audience. Charmaine Neville and Real Feelings took over from the Feisters. Charmaine took off with the tune My Mama Don't Low No, Getting Down Funky Down. Hey! That's exactly how it reads, y'all. And by the end of the song, she was soaked in sweat, and the prisoners were in a frenzy. She took the audience higher and higher, and the prisoners screamed, yelled, and applauded with each gyration of her hips and change in her voice. I bet they did. She brought the prisoners out of the prison world and into a fantasy world where there was only pleasure and joy. Dang! That must have been one hell of a concert. As Real Feelings closed their act, Charmaine threw kisses and waves and smiles with the sweat pouring off her. She took a towel and began to dry herself. Then she strode off toward the fence. The towel sailed into the air over the fence and toward the prisoners. A wave of humanity moved in unison toward the towel, but a guy from the 5th row snatched it out of the air. More towels were given to Charmaine to toss into other sections of the arena. When the towel supply ran out, prisoners began to hurl caps, scarves, handkerchiefs, shirts, T-shirts, any little item they could get autographed and used for a souvenir into the arena. No sooner had Charmaine autographed a bundle of clothing than other prisoners hurled their belongings towards her. Act 3 was the big event, the Nevilles. The brother took up where Charmaine left off. They greeted old friends. What you know, Dut? Rang out. Robert Norwood and Chicho were a couple of names that burst through the air. The Nevilles opened up with songs from the new hit album and performed many tunes from the past. They performed a moving rendition of Hey, Pocky Way, and a stirring version of the gospel tune Amazing Grace signaled out the close of the show. And I'll tell you what, I've heard Aaron Neville sing Amazing Grace, and it is amazing. I loved it, I enjoyed it, and I want to come back, said Susie of the Feister sisters. Aaron Neville told us it was so great, we're going to come back and do it again. And in the postscript, it says this story prompted Pardon Board Chairman Lawrence Hand to suggest Charles Neville had paid his dues and should file an application for a pardon. Charles was granted a full pardon by Governor Edwin Edwards. The Nevilles offered to return, but the administrative effort is only now being made to bring them back to Angola. There has been no concert at the prison by professional entertainers since the Nevilles in 1987. There you have it. 3 short stories today from the records of Wilbert Rideau. Those were completely different, right? We talked about a wildlife refuge. We talked about a concert at Angola. We talked about a park at Angola. And I'll bet those are some new things for some of you. So I appreciate you listening. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman. For Woody Overton, we are your host of Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang, Rango